This is the Market Analysis Nedbank Business Watch this Wednesday. Thank you for staying with us. We have Toba Kametse, Treasury Sales Manager at Nedbank Eswatini. He's going to help us unpack what the indices of the day are telling us. Geopolitical events continue to influence investor sentiment, of course, central bank policies, as well as some shifting economic data, and therefore global markets remain in flux. So let's listen to Toba, help us understand these numbers. Toba, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. Maybe let's start with foreign exchange movements and global trends. We are seeing here Lilangeni moving against major counterparts today. Is this a reaction to broader emerging, market trends, or are there more localized sort of factors that are at play here?
Right, good afternoon, Swiso, and thank you once again for having me. So today we've seen the rand sort of weakened from early trade this morning, and you are right in saying that it is both local and international factors, local being South Africa, of course. So I'll start with just the South African backdrop to say that there's quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of uncertainty around the budget. We saw that the budget was postponed last week. There's also the rolling power cuts, even though those were paused or suspended rather today, but we're not sure when those will return. So all of that is weighing on the South African economy. And then internationally, you have the US president pushing for tariffs on imports into the US. So all of that is then putting pressure on the rand.
Yeah. Speaking of, what the US president has been doing, in fact, he's been doing quite a lot, if we're being honest. But, the USD remains a, what do you guys call it, a global benchmark for sort of, any shift in Federal Reserve policy. It tends to have ripple effects. What are we seeing here? Are we seeing any signs that dollar strength or weakness could dictate the trajectory of Lilangeni going forward?
Yeah, so the dollar is actually under pressure with all the changes, or rather the implementations of the changes that the president is bringing into the fore. I think now what markets are looking for is the economic data. So we're going back to the fundamentals. So if we are to see that the data that is going to come out is going to be weaker, then we expect the dollar to sort of lose a bit of ground. But if it's in support, then we might see the dollar, holding on to its power in the global market.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because some economies are dealing with persistent inflation. There's, others are adjusting to soft landing. So it's really interesting what this is telling us. But I want us to get into commodities, inflation hedges, as well as, supply chain realities. Gold's movement today, what is it telling us? Is this a reaction to inflation concerns again, or are markets adjusting to other economic realities?
All right, it's a couple of things. Firstly, I would assume it is sort of a correction. We've seen gold reaching highs of about 2,950 last week. Also due to the uncertainties in the market. So gold being a safer option, investors then pull towards it. But it could be that investors have locked in their profits and have decided to sell their long positions, because we've seen quite a lot of buying into the dollar. But of late, we've seen this week the price sort of coming down. So it could be a sell-off of the dollar and investors locking in their profits. But at the same time, there's also the economic data as well. We have the personal consumption expenditure coming out on Friday, which is the Fed's preferred inflation gauge in the US. So investors are waiting to see what that is going to look like as well. So that will determine the movement that the price of gold continues to take.
Right.
But there is still hope for the price of gold to even go higher if central banks opt to buy gold, because normally they are the ones that push the price of gold up when they are building up their gold reserves.
Interesting. Well, a correction is what you're saying is happening with gold. Would the same apply for what we are seeing with oil prices ticking up slightly? Because, there is the ongoing supply chain constraints that are there. And, of course, the geopolitical tensions. Is this a correction here as well?
Yeah, so with oil, there's quite a number of things. Firstly, oil has, as you can see, has gone up
Right,
by
right.
0.22%. One of the factors has been an industry report coming out of the US that stockpiles in the US have dropped, I think, about 640,000 barrels last week. So this means that there is a bit more demand and maybe limited supply. But with the geopolitical space, as you've mentioned, we have the US pushing for a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
We then would expect that that will lead to the sanctions against Russia being lifted, and then Russia being able to increase their supply. With an increased supply of oil then in the market, it means then the price of oil might then come down.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. But perhaps let's wrap up by looking at the equities of the day, investor sentiment there, as well as some market corrections, if there are any.
All right, so I'll start with the FTSE. So the FTSE is up 0.11%.
Right.
Key contributors there are the banking sector and the mining sector. Banking sector being the two banks being Lloyd as well as Metro Bank. Lloyd up 3.2% and Metro up 1.8%. Metro announced that they will be selling off some of their personal unsecured personal loan book, a portion of it. So that has sort of boosted their share price. And then from a mining perspective, we have one of the biggest producers of copper showing an increase in their share price as well. And that is, however, we have to be cautious because yesterday President Trump talk about starting a probe into the price of copper and the sanctions on copper. So we could see that sort of coming down. But the S&P 500 is significantly down, 0.47% today. So that is in line with just the pressure that the US economy is in and the uncertainty that is happening. But later this afternoon, or this evening rather, our time, we expect the biggest chip manufacturer, NVIDIA, to release their first quarter earnings as well as forecasts. So that will definitely sort of influence or shape what the markets are going to look like from a US stocks perspective.
Toba, thank you for your time. We've